Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. Let me introduce you to the first working prototype of the GPD Win Max. Here you can see them playing The Witcher 3. On the top left you can see the current frame rate, which is 46 frames a second. This is low quality settings. Frame rate does get hurt pretty bad when we go to high quality settings. Obviously we can do medium and do a bunch of tweaks to find a compromise in image quality. Here we can see the Win Max actually being in use at the GPD headquarters. Here is the high quality version, and you can see a marked improvement to the image fidelity, but then our frame rate kind of tanks. We're down to 19 frames a second here. And again, don't take this as definitive. This is literally just running. They just put it at high settings. They didn't really do much. When I get my hands on a prototype, we're going to take it to the full length and see how far we can take this bad boy, especially when it comes to TDP and undervolting. Because we're going to take a look at the GPD Win Max, I thought it would be worthwhile to take a look at some older photos. This particular mock-up is 2 years old, 2018. So it's been around for a while. No one has really seen this image, but I figured since we're at this point so late in the game, there's no harm in showing these anymore. Very briefly, let's go over the specs on the machine. So it is an 8-inch 1280 by 800 16 by 10 display. A lot of people have talked about these large bezels on the Win Max, and unfortunately, there is no 16 by 10 8.4 8.7 inch screen that also has its resolution at 800p. And I would argue that 800p is where we need to be at. I know a lot of people want 1080p for a lot of different reasons. When people receive these types of devices, they might not be tweaking things, and having a machine run at 1080p, especially games and stuff, performance will tank bad, especially because this particular chip, the i5 1035 G7, is not capable of running anything at 1080p, really. I mean, outside of indie games and stuff. And downsampling on a 1080p and then scaling up, I'm not a big fan of. Ultimately, I think that this is the right choice. I am definitely in favor of it. I know there are people that are not, but I'd argue that this is the correct choice. The 1035 G7, we're going to go on later on in this particular video. We're going to touch base on benchmarks and specifically what you should anticipate at different types of TDPs, how much wattage this particular device takes. We do have 16 gigabytes of LPDDR4 3733 megahertz. This is really good RAM, low power RAM. Total system power, depending on brightness, is around 8 watts outside of the TDP of the SoC. Typically, you're going to see around 30 watts usage, depending on however things are running. And then, when we compare that to the watt hour on the battery, you can kind of figure out battery life, and we can tweak that a bit, and I'll go in a little bit more detail in a second. It is M2 2280. It is NVMe. I don't have that listed here, but it definitely is NVMe, which is pretty dope. We do have Thunderbolt 3, so eGPU solutions are there. Additionally, I have talked to GPD about creating a dock for the GPD Win Max, and they are taking a look at it. They're not saying anything just yet. There won't be any dock available day one, but a dock is it's being considered. So I would anticipate a dock eventually coming out for the GPD Win Max, which is pretty awesome, especially with, I had mentioned a dock that specifically could take in a GPU itself. So they didn't dismiss it. So that's great news. We do have one USB-C port and two USB Type-A. We do have full HDMI 2.0B, so that's 4K 60 with a full HDMI port, which is pretty dope. Wi-Fi 6 compatible chip, which is great if anyone has a router that has Wi-Fi 6, but we're basically right where we need to be at the current state. We do have a full RJ45 port. This is gigabit. The keyboard will be backlit. This wasn't the case 2 years ago, but things have changed, and thankfully I really think a lot of people are going to be happy about this being backlit. The Vita style D-pad. This is something that I had asked for 2 years ago, and I'm glad that we have made it here. So this is pretty awesome. And there are clickable analog sticks, so it's more of a traditional type of gamepad. And the battery is 57 watt hour. Interestingly enough, the voltage is 3 series 1 parallel, so it's like 11.6 volt. It's an interesting voltage. I have a feeling that they're going to downstep that to 7.6 volt, and then obviously all three batteries will be in use, but some types of things that affected the Win 2, when one of the series would die, you'd go down to 3.7 volt, battery life would tank really bad. Whereas with this type of battery that has 3 in series, if you go down to 2, the system would still be running. So I right now I don't want to say anything, but My suspicion is that battery woes should be less amplified than a lot of people have witnessed. Again, these are old 2-year renders. Here we can see the 2 analog sticks. These are some images. You can see way old images. Like there's no RJ45 port here anymore. Again, these are really old, but this is more just so that you guys can kind of see it and see what I've been looking at for 2 years while waiting for this. Again, this is a 2-year image. Size-wise, everything is the same, and it's really just to get a good relationship between the Win Max and the Switch. And I feel like the Switch is a good thing to compare against because obviously a lot of people are using it and are happy with using it as portable and something that is not as wide as the Switch, but obviously thicker. We're still in the same ballpark. So I know that some people feel that the Win Max is too big for a handheld. The Switch is definitely portable, but not pocketable. Same for the Win Max. This does not mean that GPD is not making smaller devices. The Win 3, which will be the same size as the Win 2, is still planned, but it's coming out in 2021. It's not this year. So don't worry. GPD is not stopping smaller devices. They're just making other categories of devices. Okay, I just want to make that clear. Here's some other types of images that other people have seen. Here's the Win 2 comparatively to the Win Max on a hand size. And these are just older pictures. This is a newer one. You can see that all of the ports have changed, as well as Thunderbolt and the full HDMI, and then that full RJ45 port. Really, I'm super looking forward to, as well as microSD, which was not present on older renders. One thing that I'm super looking forward to with regard to the Win Max is actually using this device as my main home machine as well as my work machine, and I want to see how well that actually works out. Here is a super old image of the AMD board that was going around that never made fruition. They switched to Ice Lake. This is the Ice Lake revision that, again, no one has seen just yet, but I figured, since we're doing this video, I'd show you everything that I got. The keyboard has gone through some revisions. Even this one has gone through some revisions. Things will be changing up to the 11th hour. Here's a closer look at the heatsink itself, just so you can get a good look at the dual heat pipes and the dual fans. Again, we've seen some earlier stress tests, especially with Furmark, for 6 minutes straight, and that was running at 20 watt, and it was hitting only 60 degrees Celsius. So the heatsink solution looks like it's going to be very, very capable on the Win Max. I'm going to quickly play this video for you because this is me testing a Dell XPS system, and it does indeed have, this is the G7 1065. We can see that in a moment. I'll pause it for you as soon as I get it. So right here you can see it is the i7 1065 G7. And I am kind of testing this at different wattages, and it was pretty hard. Right over here you can see that it did scale up to 35 watt. The TDP on this thing, the PL1 and PL2, you can see power limit 1 and power limit 2 here. These ranges are dynamic. You can see that these were actually changing all over the place. So it's going to be interesting, especially using the later version of Throttle Stop to kind of take control of this. But also GPD has specific settings that they're going to be going with themselves. Right now they're targeting 15 watt and 25 watt. But yeah, so trying to get this down to 15 watt was pretty much a challenge on the Dell XPS, but I did wind up managing getting there, and I also got a decent benchmark out of it. Here we can see PL2 power limit. You can see 46 watt. Ice Lake goes up tremendously. You can see right here it is the i7 1065 G7. Technically the TDP max is 61 watts on this guy. Ice Lake is a pig. And previously when I had my videos when I said that Ice Lake isn't that great, Ice Lake isn't that great because when we talk about performance, it is basically in line with what AMD did in late 2017. Now that's fine because there is no AMD solution that GPD could make. In fact, all AMD handhelds that were coming out are not out yet, and the only way that we're going to get this type of performance is with Intel. So we are where we are, and we're going to have to make the best of this type of situation, and that's all there really is to it. This is the Heaven benchmark that I did on Ice Lake. You can see it is the 1065 G7. This benchmark is at 15 watts. Now, to compare that, here is the Win 2 at 12 watts. Now, you can see that the score is 1191, and then here we have 1427. If you look at FPS numbers, these numbers don't really change all that much. We are looking at around a 20% improvement still, because if you look at average FPS, it's a 20% improvement, and a 20% improvement is in line with the TDP change, right? Because we go from 12 watt to 15 watt. So we're using 20% more power to get 20% more performance. And that's really pretty much what's the problem with Ice Lake. Now at 25 watt, you should anticipate at a minimum 2 times the performance, the gaming performance. Now we can undervolt. I don't know how well that's going to work. We're going to see. I'm going to try to push that. It looks like throttle stop does have some undervolting capabilities. We'll see. It's going to be a lot of Silicon Lottery stuff, but this is what GPD has released, and largely we only care about the graphics section here, and they're comparing 1605B to an i7, but specifically this is a Surface laptop and a ThinkPad, which is a 2500U, right? So the 2500U. They put 1605B because these are basically the same thing. So when you kind of chart these out, these green and where are we? So we have Vega as green and this maroon as the Iris 64. These power limits are similar, but you can undervolt V1605B or 2500U a lot more and actually overtake the Ice Lake pretty good. However, 2500U does max out at 25 watts. There is no taking it further. Even though it does need more, it clearly will not take more. Ice Lake can and does take more than 25 watts. So it remains to be seen where we can do it, especially when you think about it from just plugging in your machine and using it connected to a monitor. We're going to be able to take Ice Lake a lot farther than 2500U can go. So that is a small silver lining to this entire thing, is that Ice Lake is pretty good in that it is as good as a 2500U, but it can go further in terms of the TDP scale, and the total system power is a lot better. Again, this is just the specs of the machine. This is the GPD Win Max. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thanks for watching. As soon as I get a proto, I'm going to be dumping out videos left and right on this guy. So once that starts, definitely join the Discord. I'm going to have a Discord link in the description field on the bottom of this video. Please join if you have any questions, especially when I get a prototype, and then you want me to test any game. Just let me know, and I'll be sure to test it because it's going to be a crazy fun time. Anywho, thanks so much, guys. See you later.